The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber had never seen such chaos. Representatives from 12 different species sat in their floating pods, their voices creating a symphony of panic that echoed through the vast space. Ambassador Kethvel of the Zephyrian species stood at the center podium, his normally blue crystalline body flickering with deep red patterns of distress. "The Outer Rim worlds are gone," Kethvel announced, his voice carrying the weight of 1,000 dead civilizations. Proxima, Kepler, 442, even the fortress world of Granite Prime. All consumed, all ... empty. The chamber fell silent. Even the usually chattering Pequod delegates stopped their nervous clicking. Everyone knew what this meant. The Void Swarm had returned. Counselor Uridine of the Helios Federation floated forward in her energy pod, her form crackling with barely contained electricity. "How many ships did we lose in the last engagement?" 17,000, Kethval replied, his color shifting to a sickly green. "The Zentarian battle fleet is gone. Drakmori war clans fought to the last warrior. The swarm adapted to every weapon we threw at them. The ancient enemy had first appeared 3,000 years ago, consuming entire star systems and leaving nothing but empty space behind. Back then, the United Galactic Forces had barely managed to drive them back into the dark void between galaxies. Now they had returned. They were stronger." General Dexmore of the Drakmori Empire slammed his armored fist against his pod's console. "My warriors died with honor. But honor means nothing to these creatures. They'll learn from every battle. They adapt. They become stronger." Dr. Zenter, the insectoid representative of the Hive Collective, buzzed nervously. "Our analysis shows the swarm's technology has evolved to counter our energy weapons within minutes. Their armor adapts too. Our kinetic rounds. Even our best ships cannot penetrate their defenses." "Then we need new tactics," Uridine said, her electrical form pulsing with frustration. "Something they haven't seen before." "What tactics?" Dexmore growled. "We've tried everything. Coordinated fleet actions, energy bombardment, even ramming. Attacks. Nothing works. They consume our ships and use the materials to build more of themselves." The chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates called for evacuation to the far galaxy. Others suggested trying to negotiate with the swarm. A few spoke of making a final stand at the Galactic. Kor Kethvel raised his hand for silence. "There is ... one possibility, something we haven't considered." "Speak," Uridine commanded. "The new species, it's the ones from the Outer Rim, the ... humans." The chamber filled with uncomfortable murmurs. The Pequod delegates began their nervous clicking. Again, even Dr. Zenter's buzzing grew louder. "You mean the Deathworlders?" Dexmore asked with disgust. "Those primitive savages from that poisonous planet. Their world is classified as Class 12, Kethval said quietly, the same classification as a living nightmare. Gravity that would crush most of us, an atmosphere that burns. Weather systems that could destroy cities. And somehow, they not only survived but thrived." "That doesn't make them warriors," Uridine protested. "Survival and military capability are different things, are they?" Kethvel asked. "We've observed their transmissions. They fight each other constantly. They've been at war for their entire recorded history. They've developed weapons that could destroy their own planet multiple times over." "Exactly," Dr. Zenter buzzed. "They're too violent, too unpredictable. They fight without honor, without rules. They're animals." "Maybe that's what we need," Kethvel said. "Animals." The chamber fell silent again. The idea was shocking, even desperate. In 3,000 years of galactic civilization, warfare had become refined, honorable. Ships faced each other in orderly lines. Battles followed established protocols. Surrender was accepted with dignity. "I've studied their military history," Kethval continued. "They don't fight like us, don't follow our rules. They use tactics we would consider insane, such as..." Uridine asked. "They attack their own positions to deny them to enemies. They sacrifice themselves to achieve victory. They fight in conditions that would kill most galactic species. Never lost a war when their survival was at stake." Dexmore stood up in his pod. You're suggesting we trust our civilization to these these monsters? The swarm is 12 systems away. From the galactic core, their current pace, they'll reach Centauri Prime in 6 months. After that, every major world will fall within a year. The silence stretched for long minutes. Finally, Yaradin spoke. What do we know about their current military capabilities? Limited, Kethful admitted. They've been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. Their technology is primitive by our standards, but they've been building warships at an incredible rate. And their ships are designed for aggressive tactics, meaning they're built to ram things, to explode, to fight at close range. Everything we've spent millennia evolving away from. Double quotes, Dr. Zenter's buzzing grew agitated. I think the swarm is designed to counter our tactics, Kethfall said. They've studied us for 3,000 years. They know how we fight. They know how we think. But they've never encountered Deathworlders. Counselor Yaradin floated closer. To the podium? Even if we agree to this insanity, how do we contact them? They're not members of the Council. They've barely made contact with galactic civilization. We send a distress signal, Kethfall said. A simple message. Ask for help. If they refuse, Dexmore asked. Then we die with dignity, Kethfall replied. But if they accept... He paused, his crystalline form flickering between colors as he processed the implications. If they accept, we might actually win. The vote was closer than anyone expected. 7 species voted in favor, 4 against, with 1 abstention. Message would be sent. 3 days later, Commander Jake Morrison sat in the communications center of Earth's orbital station, staring at the alien transmission that had just arrived. The message was simple, transmitted in broken English that the aliens had apparently learned from intercepted broadcasts. Galactic Council to human species. Ancient enemy has returned. Our forces defeated. Billions dead. Galaxy will fall unless... Stopped. Request immediate military assistance. Time is short. Please help. Jake leaned back in his chair, processing what he'd just read. Around him, the communication staff worked quietly, but he could feel their tension. This was it. Humanity's first real contact with galactic civilization, and they were being asked to fight a war. He activated his communicator. Get me Admiral Mitchell. Priority Alpha. Within minutes, Admiral Claire Mitchell's face appeared on his screen. What's the situation, Jake? Ma'am, we've received a distress signal from something called the Galactic Council. They're asking for military assistance against what they describe as an ancient enemy. Mitchell's expression grew serious.
What?
Kind of assistance? Not specific, but based on the message, they're losing badly. They mentioned billions dead and the galaxy falling unless this enemy is stopped. Could be a trap, Mitchell said after a moment. Could be, Jake agreed. But if it's real, then we're about to find out what humans can do. When the stakes are galactic survival. Mitchell paused, briefed the president. In the meantime, prep our fastest ships. If we're going to help, we need to know what we're dealing with. Jake nodded. Yes, ma'am. Should I send a reply? Tell them help is coming, Mitchell said. Jake, make sure our ships are ready for anything. Something tells me we're about to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can really do. As the transmission ended, Jake looked back at the alien message on his screen. The galaxy was calling for help, and humanity was about to answer. He just hoped they were ready for what they were asking for. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Centauri system like a pack of wolves entering a sheep pasture. Captain Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, watching the alien homeworld grow larger on the main screen. Behind her ship, 23 other Earth vessels maintained formation, their dark holes bristling with weapons that looked crude compared to the elegant alien designs. First contact protocols are active, reported Lieutenant Commander Sam Rodriguez from the communications station. The aliens are transmitting docking instructions. Lisa nodded, but her attention was focused on the alien ships surrounding them. Sleek, beautiful vessels that looked more like art pieces than warships. Their hulls gleamed with polished metal and energy fields that created rainbow patterns across their surfaces. Everything about them screamed advanced civilization. They're pretty muttered. Chief Engineer Rick Palmer from his position near the tactical display. Real pretty. But I don't see much armor. Maybe they don't need it, Lisa replied, though. She had the same thought. The alien ships looked fragile, built for speed and elegance, rather than the brutal give and take of real combat. The docking procedure took 3 hours. Human ships were designed for quick, efficient docking at military stations. The aliens apparently preferred a slow, ceremonial approach with multiple scans, formal announcements, and what seemed like endless bureaucratic delays. They're treating this like a diplomatic visit, observed Dr. Kevin Barnes, the expedition's xenobiologist. Very formal, very structured. Let's hope they fight better than they dock, Lisa muttered. Finally, the human delegation was escorted to the Galactic Council chambers. Lisa led the group, accompanied by Dr. Barnes, Admiral Claire Mitchell, who had arrived on a faster ship, and Marine Colonel Ryan Torres. The aliens had requested a small group to avoid overwhelming their systems. The council chamber was impressive. A massive crystal dome filled with floating pods, each containing a different alien species, Lisa counted. At least 12 different types of beings, from crystalline creatures to energy forms to insectoid hive minds. All of them were staring at the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to poorly concealed disgust. Ambassador Kethval floated forward in his pod, his crystalline form shifting to a neutral blue color. Welcome, humans. We're grateful for your response to our distress call. We're here to help, Admiral Mitchell replied. But we need to understand what we're dealing with, of course, Kethval said. General Dexmore of the Drakmori Empire will brief you on our military situation. The armored alien warrior moved his pod to the center of the chamber. Even sitting, he was impressive, with thick armor plating and weapons mounted on his arms. But Lisa noticed something odd about his posture. He looked defeated, almost broken. The Void Swarm has consumed 47 star systems, Dexmore began, his voice heavy with grief. They strike without warning, consume everything in their path, and leave nothing behind.
Ow.
Our fleets have engaged them 17 times.
Oh, we have.
Lost every battle. Admiral Mitchell leaned forward. What's their composition? Ship types? Estimated numbers? Tactical doctrine? They do not use ships as we understand them, Dexmore replied. They are living vessels, grown rather than built. They adapt to our weapons during combat. Our energy beams become useless within minutes. Our kinetic weapons are absorbed and turned against us. What about boarding actions? Colonel Torres asked. Close quarters combat? The chamber fell silent. Several aliens exchanged glances that suggested the question was somehow offensive. We do not board enemy vessels, Dexmore said slowly. Such actions are considered primitive, barbaric. Why? Torres pressed. Because civilized species fight with honor, Counselor Uridine interjected, her electrical form crackling with agitation. We engage in formal combat between vessels. We accept surrender when offered. We do not invade each other's ships like pirates. Lisa looked at her fellow humans. Admiral Mitchell's expression was carefully neutral, but Lisa could see the wheels turning in her mind. Dr. Barnes was taking notes, probably cataloging what he saw as cultural differences. Colonel Torres looked like he was trying not to laugh. So you've never tried to capture enemy vessels? Mitchell asked. The concept is foreign to us, Kethval replied. We fight to disable, not to destroy. When a vessel is crippled, its crew surrenders and is treated with honor, and the swarm? Lisa asked. Do they follow these rules? No, Dexmore said bitterly. They consume our ships, our crews, everything. They show no mercy, except no surrender. They are not civilized. Neither are we, Torres said quietly. The chamber erupted in uncomfortable murmurs. Dr. Zenter's buzzing grew louder, and several other aliens began what sounded like heated discussions in their native languages. Perhaps we should review combat footage, Admiral Mitchell suggested, clearly trying to redirect the conversation. It would help us understand your tactics. The aliens activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber. Lisa watched as the battle unfolded, showing sleek alien vessels arranged in perfect formation lines, firing energy weapons at approaching swarm ships. The aliens maintained their formations even as the enemy closed distance, following what appeared to be established battle protocols. "They're fighting like it's the 18th century, Torres whispered to Lisa. "Line formations, formal maneuvers, everything by the book." Lisa nodded. She could see the problem immediately. The aliens fought like they were following a rule book, while the swarm adapted and evolved with each engagement. The alien ships were beautiful and advanced, but they were fighting a war of honor against an enemy that knew no honor. "Your ships are impressive," Admiral Mitchell said diplomatically, "but your tactics seem ... rigid." "Our tactics have served us well for 3,000 years, Uradine replied stiffly. "We have ended wars, not by destruction, but by demonstrating superior discipline and technology." "The swarm doesn't care about your discipline," Dr. Barnes observed. "They're a hive mind focused on consumption and adaptation. They'll use your adherence to rules against you." "Then what do you suggest?" Kethville asked. Mitchell exchanged glances with Torres and Lisa. "We need to study your enemy more closely. Do you have any captured swarm specimens?" "We do not capture," Thexmore said firmly. "We destroy what we can and retreat when we cannot." "You've never tried to board a swarm vessel?" "As I said, such actions are barbaric." Torres stepped forward. "Admiral, request permission to speak freely." "Granted. So these people are fighting a war with one hand tied behind their backs. They won't board enemy ships. They won't break formation. They won't even try to capture specimens for study. They're fighting like this is some kind of gentleman's duel instead of a war for survival." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Several aliens were clearly offended by Torres's assessment. Others seemed to be arguing among themselves. "You dare to criticize our methods?" Dexmore roared, his armor plate shifting to a threatening red color. "My people have been warriors for 10,000 years. "I'm not criticizing your courage," Torres replied calmly. "I'm criticizing your tactics. You're fighting an enemy that adapts to everything you do, and you're using the same approaches that stopped working 15 battles ago." "Then show us your methods," Uradine challenged. "Demonstrate how Deathworlders fight." Admiral Mitchell stood up. "We will. But first, we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. We'll need access to all your battle data, sensor readings, and any physical evidence you've collected." "You will have it," Kethville promised. "But in return, we want to see human combat capabilities." "You'll see them," Mitchell replied. "But I warn you, we don't fight like you do. We don't follow your rules. We do whatever it takes to win. Even if it's barbaric." Dr. Zenter buzzed. "Especially if it's barbaric," Torres said with a grin that made several aliens visibly recoil. "The swarm is about to learn why Earth is classified as a death world. I mean, it's not because of our gravity or our atmosphere." Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She'd served with Torres for 3 years, and she'd never seen him look so predatory. Around the chamber, the aliens were beginning to realize that they might have invited something more dangerous than the swarm into their galaxy. "What have we done?" she heard one of the Pequod delegates whisper to another, looking at her fellow. Humans. Lisa was beginning to wonder the same thing. But as she thought about the billions of innocent beings the swarm had consumed, she pushed the doubt aside. Sometimes survival required monsters, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what their monsters could do. The combined fleet hung in space at the edge of the Proxima sector, a strange mix of elegant alien vessels and the brutal angular shapes of human warships. Admiral Claire Mitchell stood in the command center of the UES Defiance, watching the tactical displays with growing frustration. The alien fleet commanders were still arguing about formation protocols. "They've been at this for 6 hours," Colonel Ryan Torres muttered, watching the alien communication channels. 6 hours to decide who gets to shoot first? "It's their way," Dr. Kevin Barnes replied, though he sounded tired. "They've structured their entire military doctrine around formal engagement rules." Admiral Mitchell activated the fleet communication system. "General Vexmore, this is Admiral Mitchell. We have confirmed swarm contacts approaching from 3 directions. We need to move now." The Drakmori general's voice crackled through the speakers. We are still coordinating formation assignments. The Helios Federation claims priority position based on their energy weapon superiority. The Zephyrian fleet disputes this claim. While they're arguing, the swarm is getting closer. Captain Lisa Hayes observed from her position at the tactical station. Our sensors show at least 30 enemy vessels, possibly more. Mitchell made a decision. Human fleet, this is Admiral Mitchell. We're moving to intercept. All ships, attack formation Delta, weapons free. The human ships broke away from the alien formation, their engines burning bright as they accelerated toward the approaching swarm. Behind them, the alien fleet continued its debate, now complicated by the humans' unexpected departure from protocol. Admiral, we're receiving angry transmissions from the alien commanders, reported Lieutenant Commander Sam Rodriguez. They're saying we're violating established engagement procedures. Tell them we're establishing new procedures, Mitchell replied. Based on actually winning battles. First swarm ships came into view on the main screen. They were horrible things, like living tumors of dark metal and organic growths. They moved with a fluid grace that made them seem more like sea creatures than spacecraft. As the human fleet approached, the swarm vessels began to shift and adapt, their hulls reshaping to counter expected tactics. They're adapting to standard approach vectors, reported Chief Engineer Rick Palmer. Just like in the alien battle footage, and we won't use standard vectors, Mitchell said calmly. Torres, signal the Marines. Prepare for boarding operations. Torres grinned. Now you're talking my language? The human attack began like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of forming neat battle lines, the human ships scattered in all directions, approaching the swarm from multiple angles simultaneously. The USS Defiance led a group of destroyers in a direct frontal assault, while Captain Hayes took her squadron around the enemy flank. Ramming speed, Mitchell ordered, as they closed distance with the largest swarm vessel. The bridge crew strapped themselves in as the Defiance accelerated to maximum velocity. The swarm ship tried to adapt, reshaping its hull to deflect the incoming impact, but the humans weren't planning to ram. At the last second, the Defiance rolled hard to port, scraping along the enemy hull while Marines and assault pods launched from the ship's belly. Boarding parties away, Torres reported, his voice tight with excitement. Sergeant Amy Carter's team is in the lead pod. The alien fleet finally arrived at the battle, but they were unprepared for what they found. Human ships were weaving between swarm vessels, firing at point-blank range, launching boarding parties, and using tactics that seemed to border on insanity. What are they doing? Bor Z's voice came through the communication system, filled with horror and confusion. They're fighting, Admiral Mitchell replied, watching as the UES Vengeance deliberately rammed a swarm cruiser, using the impact to deploy Marines directly onto the enemy hull. This is what war looks like when your species' survival depends on it. Inside the swarm vessel, Sergeant Amy Carter and her team moved through corridors that seemed to pulse with organic life. The walls were covered in a substance that looked like living muscle, and the air was thick with strange vapors that made their suits' environmental systems work over time. This place gives me the creeps, muttered Corporal Dan Murphy, his rifle trained on the shadows ahead. It's like we're inside some kind of giant stomach. Stay focused, Carter replied. Our job is to find the control center and plant the charges. Intel suggests it's deeper in the ship. They moved through the alien vessel, encountering swarm defenders that were unlike anything in the galactic databases. These weren't separate creatures but extensions of the ship itself. Growing from the walls and floor to attack the intruders, the Marines fought with brutal efficiency, using flamethrowers, explosive charges, and close-quarters combat techniques that no civilized species would consider. Found something, reported Private Lisa Wong from the point position. Looks like some kind of nerve center. Carter moved forward to investigate. The chamber was filled with pulsing nodes of organic matter, connected by thick cables that looked like oversized blood vessels. In the center, a massive brain-like structure coordinated the ship's functions. That's our target, Carter said, pulling explosive charges from her pack. Wong Murphy, set up perimeter. We're gonna blow this thing and get out of here. In space, The battle had turned into something the aliens had never imagined. Human ships were deliberately damaging themselves to get close to swarm vessels. The UES Hornet had lost half its hull plating, but was still fighting, its crew firing weapons through gaping holes in their own ship. "They're insane," whispered Counselor Uridine, watching from her command ship as a human destroyer used its own explosion to take out 3 swarm vessels. "They're destroying themselves to win." "No," said Ambassador Kethfell, his crystalline form flickering with something that might have been awe. "They're sacrificing themselves to save us." Lieutenant Ben Foster was leading a demolition team through the bowels of a swarm mothership. His team had fought their way through 3 decks of organic defenders, leaving a trail of destruction behind them. Now, they were approaching the enemy ship's power core. "Charges set," reported Specialist Kate Morrison, her uniform torn and stained with alien fluids.
Ow.
"We've got about 5 minutes before this thing goes critical. Then we'd better move fast." Foster replied, but he knew they probably wouldn't make it out. The path back to their insertion point was crawling with swarm defenders, and his team was running low on ammunition. Sir Morrison said quietly, "We're not going to make it back to the pods." Foster looked at his team. They were young, barely out of training, but they understood what was at stake. "I know, but we're going to make sure this ship never hurts." "Anyone again?" The explosion of the swarm mothership lit up the entire sector. The human fleet, battered and bleeding, regrouped around the debris field. They had lost 6 ships and over 400 Marines, but they had accomplished something. The aliens hadn't managed in 17 previous engagements. They had one. "Casualties?" Admiral Mitchell asked, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Heavy Torres replied. "But Amy Carter's team made it out. They brought back samples from the swarm control systems." Dr. Barnes examined the organic samples that the Marines had recovered. "This is incredible. These nodes are how the swarm coordinates its hive mind. If we can disrupt these systems, we can hurt them," Mitchell finished. "Really hurt them." General Vaxmore's ship docked with the Defiance an hour later. The Drakmori warrior boarded with a small escort, his armor scarred from the battle. When he saw Admiral Mitchell, he removed his helmet in a gesture of respect. "I have fought in 1,000 battles," he said, his voice filled with something approaching reverence. "But I have never seen anything like what your people did today. You fight without honor, without mercy, without any regard for your own lives." "We fight to win," Mitchell replied simply. "Yes," Vaxmore nodded. "And perhaps that is what we have. Forgotten? We fight to be honorable. You fight to survive. There is a difference." Captain Hayes approached with a damage report. "We lost the Vengeance, the Hornet, and 4 destroyers. The surviving ships are all damaged, some severely. But we've proven something important." "What's that?" Micho asked. "The swarm can be beaten. They're not invincible. They're just used to fighting enemies who follow rules." Hayes paused. "We don't follow rules." Ambassador Kethfell's communication came through the ship's speakers. "Admiral Mitchell, the Galactic Council is requesting a full briefing on human combat doctrine. They want to understand how you achieved victory. Tell them we'll be happy to explain," Mitchell replied. "But they might not like what they hear." The combined fleet prepared to return to Council space. Word of the human victory spread through the galaxy. The elegant alien civilizations were beginning to understand that sometimes survival required abandoning everything they thought they knew about warfare. The swarm had ruled through fear and adaptation for 3,000 years. To learn what it meant to face an enemy that was willing to sacrifice everything for victory, the Deathworlders had come to the galaxy, and nothing would ever be the same. The news of the human victory at Proxima spread through the galaxy like wildfire. In the 3 weeks following the battle, 17 alien species had requested human military advisors. The Galactic Council chambers buzzed with activity as representatives tried to understand how the Deathworlders had achieved what seemed impossible. Captain Derek Stone stood in the briefing room of the UES Ranger, studying the holographic display of the Kepler system. Intelligence reports showed a massive swarm presence there, including what appeared to be a queen vessel.
Ow.
The aliens had never seen one before, but human scouts had identified the distinctive energy signatures. "The Swarm Queen is the key," Dr. Kevin Barnes explained to the assembled officers. "Based on our analysis of the samples from Proxima, These queens coordinate entire fleets. If we can capture one, we can learn how their hive mind works, finished Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim from the Intelligence Department. Maybe even find a way to disrupt their entire network. Stone nodded, but his expression was grim. The problem is getting to it. The Queen vessel is in the center of the largest swarm fleet we've ever seen. Over 200 ships, all adapted from our previous encounters. Admiral Mitchell's image appeared on the communication screen. Captain Stone, you have authorization for Operation Deep Strike. The alien fleet commanders are reluctant to participate in what they consider a suicide mission. Can't say I blame them, Stone replied. This is going to be ugly. The plan was simple in concept, but terrifying in execution. A small strike force would penetrate the swarm fleet using a captured enemy vessel as camouflage. Once close to the Queen's ship, they would board it and attempt to capture the Queen alive. The mission had a survival probability of less than 15%. Volunteers only, Stone announced to his crew. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship has my permission. Not a single person requested transfer. Marine Captain Maria Santos led the boarding team preparations. She was a veteran of the Proxima battle, one of the few who had survived close quarters combat with the swarm. Her team consisted of 24 Marines, all specialists in hostile environment operations. Remember, she told her team as they checked their equipment, we're not here to destroy the Queen. We need her alive. The science team thinks she might be the key to understanding how the entire swarm network operates. Sergeant Tom Bradley, Santos's second in command, looked up from his weapon. What if she doesn't want to come quietly? Then we convince her. Santos replied with a grin that didn't reach her eyes. We're very good at convincing people. Captured swarm vessel had been modified by human engineers working around the clock. The organic hull had been partially replaced with human technology, allowing the ship to be controlled by human crew while maintaining its swarm appearance. The work was dangerous, with 3 engineers dying from exposure to swarm biotoxins. Ship is ready, reported Chief Engineer Rick Palmer. But I have to warn you, the organic systems are fighting our modifications. We might have 12 hours before the hull starts rejecting our technology, and we better make those 12 hours count, Stone said. The infiltration began at dawn, ship time. The modified swarm vessel, now designated U.S. Trojan, approached the enemy fleet using captured navigation codes. To external sensors, it appeared to be a damaged swarm ship returning from battle. We're inside their perimeter, whispered Lieutenant Tony Martinez from the pilot's position. Why 2 ships within weapons range, but they're not reacting to us. Stone watched the tactical display as they moved deeper into the swarm fleet. The enemy ships were massive, some over 3 kilometers long, all covered in the same organic armor that had proven so difficult to penetrate. At the center of the formation, the Queen vessel waited. There she is, breathed Dr. Barnes, staring at the alien ship. It's beautiful in a terrifying way. The Queen vessel was unlike anything they had seen before. Instead of the usual dark, tumor-like appearance of swarm ships, this one seemed to glow with internal light. Its hull was covered in patterns that shifted and changed, almost like living art. Beautiful or not, we need to get inside, Stone said. Martinez, take us in. Close Santos, get your team ready. The docking procedure was the most dangerous part of the mission. The Trojan had to physically connect with the Queen vessel, trusting that the captured ship's organic systems would be accepted by the larger craft. If the deception failed, they would be detected and destroyed within seconds. Docking clamps. Engaged, Martinez reported. We're connected, but I'm reading some kind of biological scan in progress. The Queen is testing us, Dr. Barnes said, monitoring the alien systems. She's trying to determine if we're really a swarm ship. The seconds stretched into minutes. Then, finally, the airlock opened. We're in, Santos reported as her team moved into the Queen vessel. The interior is different from the other ships. more elegant. The corridors of the Queen vessel were lined with what looked like living crystal formations. The walls pulsed with soft light, and the air itself seemed to shimmer with energy. It was beautiful and alien, in a way that made the Marines nervous. "Stay alert," Santos warned. "Beautiful doesn't mean safe." They moved deeper into the ship, following the biosignatures that indicated the Queen's location. Unlike the other swarm vessels, this one seemed almost empty. They encountered no defenders, no automatic systems, nothing to stop their advance. "This is too easy," muttered Sergeant Bradley. "Where are the guards? Maybe the Queen doesn't need guards," Santos replied. "Maybe she's the guard." They found the Queen chamber at the heart of the ship. It was a vast space filled with organic structures that looked like a cross between coral and computer circuits. In the center, suspended in a web of living cables, was the Queen herself. She was not what they had expected. Instead of the dark insectoid creature they had imagined, the Queen was almost beautiful. Her form was humanoid, but elongated, covered in skin that seemed to shift between colors. Most disturbing of all, her eyes were clearly intelligent. "She's looking at us," whispered Private Jake Wilson. The Queen spoke, her voice somehow reaching their minds directly. "You are not of the swarm. You are the destroyers, the ones who fight without honor." "We're here to stop the killing," Santos replied, not sure if the creature could understand spoken words. "The killing will continue until all is consumed," the Queen responded. "It is the way of the swarm. It is the way of existence." "It's not anymore," Santos said, signaling her team to surround the Queen. "You're coming with us." The Queen's laughter was like breaking glass. "You cannot capture what you do not understand. I'm not merely a creature. I am a node in the network, a single voice in the collective consciousness." "Then we'll just have to disconnect you," Bradley said, raising his weapon. "Wait," Dr. Barnes's voice came through their communicators. "She's right. Look at the cables. Connecting her to the ship, if we cut them wrong, we might kill her." The Queen tilted her head, studying the humans with curiosity. "You fight to preserve life, even the life of your enemy. This is ... unexpected. We're not here to commit murder," Santos said. "We're here to end a war." "War is the natural state of existence," the Queen replied. "The strong consume the weak. It's the adapted survive. The swarm has adapted to consume everything. Everything. Except us," Santos pointed out. For the first time, the Queen seemed uncertain. "Your species is ... unusual. You fight with tactics that defy logical prediction. You sacrifice yourselves for others. Show mercy to enemies. These behaviors are counterproductive to survival." "Maybe," Santos said, moving closer to the Queen. "But they're what make us human." Dr. Barnes had been studying the biocables, connecting the Queen to her ship. "Captain Santos, I think I can safely disconnect her, but we need to move fast. The other ships are starting to react to our presence." "Do it," Santos ordered. The disconnection process was delicate work. Dr. Barnes had to carefully cut through organic conduits while monitoring the Queen's vital signs. Each severed connection caused the Queen to convulse, her form flickering between colors. You are separating me from my children," the Queen gasped. "I can feel them becoming confused, directionless. That's the idea," Santos replied. Though she felt a pang of sympathy for the creature's obvious pain, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. The swarm fleet had finally realized what was happening. On the Trojan's bridge, Captain Stone watched as enemy vessels began converging on their position. "Santos, we need to move now," he called through the communicators. "The entire fleet is heading our way." "Almost done," Barnes replied, his voice tight with concentration. "Just one more connection." The final cable was thicker than the others, pulsing with energy that made the air around it shimmer. When Barnes cut it, the Queen screamed, a sound that seemed to come from every surface in the chamber. Dr. Santos announced as her team lifted the now unconscious Queen. "But she's heavy, and we need to move fast." The retreat to the Trojan was a running battle. The ship's organic systems had finally begun rejecting the human modifications, causing hull breaches and system failures. They reached the docking bay just as the Queen vessel began launching its own security forces. "Undock." Now, Stone ordered as soon as the boarding team was aboard. The final battle for the galaxy began at the edge of the galactic core, where the ancient homeworlds of 12 species waited in the path of the largest swarm fleet ever assembled. Over 3,000 enemy vessels moved through space like a living nightmare, their organic hulls pulsing with malevolent energy as they approached the heart of civilization. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the massive combined fleet prepare for what everyone knew would be the last battle. Human ships fought alongside alien vessels in formations that would have been impossible just months ago. The elegant Zephyrian cruisers moved in perfect coordination with brutal human destroyers, while Drakmori battleships provided cover for human boarding craft. "Final count, sir," reported Captain Lisa Hayes from the communications station. "We have 847 ships total. The swarm fleet is at least 3 times that size." Morrison nodded grimly. The numbers were bad, but they had advantages the swarm didn't expect. Captured Queen had provided crucial intelligence about the enemy's command structure, and human tactics had spread throughout the galactic fleet like a virus. "General Dexmore is requesting permission to lead the first wave," Hayes continued. "Granted," Morrison replied. "But remind him about the new protocols. No more honor duels. No more formal surrender procedures. We fight like humans now." Drakmori General's voice came through the speakers, carrying a tone that would have been unthinkable months ago. "Admiral, my warriors are ready to die for victory, not for honor." The transformation of the galactic military had been remarkable. Species that had fought with rigid formations for thousands of years were now adopting human tactics. Ramming attacks, boarding actions, and kamikaze runs had become standard procedures. The aliens had learned that sometimes survival required abandoning everything they thought they knew about civilized warfare. Dr. Kevin Barnes worked frantically in the Liberty's laboratory, putting the finishing touches on what he called the Queen Protocol. The captured Swarm Queen had been connected to a modified human computer system, allowing her to send commands through the Swarm network. The plan was desperate and dangerous, but it was their only chance to turn the enemy's greatest strength against them. "She's fighting the connection," Barnes reported as he monitored the Queen's vital signs. "Her natural instincts are to resist outside control." "Can you override her?" Morrison asked. "Maybe, but if I push too hard, I might kill her. If she dies while connected to the network, the feedback could damage or destroy every swarm ship in the galaxy." Morrison looked at the tactical display, where the enemy fleet was growing larger by the hour. "How long do we have?" 6 hours before they reach the core worlds. Maybe less. The first phase of the battle began with a human innovation that shocked even their allies. Instead of meeting the swarm fleet in open space, the combined forces retreated to the asteroid fields surrounding the core systems. There, they had prepared a trap that would have been impossible without human engineering. "Scorched Earth Protocol is active," reported Colonel Ryan Torres from the Tactical Center. "All mining stations, orbital platforms, and defensive structures are rigged to explode on command." The plan was simple and brutal. As the swarm fleet advanced through the asteroid fields, the defenders would destroy everything of value, denying the enemy the resources they needed while creating navigational hazards that would disrupt their formations. "They're taking the bait," observed Captain Derek Stone, watching from his position aboard the UES Ranger. "The swarm is moving to consume the mining stations." "Then let's give them something to chew on," Morrison said. "Execute Scorched Earth." The explosions lit up the asteroid field like a chain of supernovas. Mining stations, orbital refineries, and defensive platforms detonated in sequence, creating a wall of fire and debris that caught the leading edge of the swarm fleet. Dozens of enemy ships were destroyed or damaged, but more importantly, their tight formation was broken. "Phase 2, Morrison ordered. "All ships, attack pattern chaos." The human-trained fleet scattered in all directions, abandoning formation entirely. Ships attacked from every angle, using asteroids as cover, ramming enemy vessels, and launching boarding parties in the middle of the firestorm. Swarm, expecting orderly battle lines, found themselves fighting a 3-dimensional nightmare. Captain Maria Santos led a boarding party onto a swarm battleship, her team moving through corridors that pulsed with organic rage. The enemy ship was trying to adapt to the human attack, but the rapid changes in tactics kept it off balance. "Plant the charges and move," Santos ordered as her team reached the ship's control center. "We've got 5 minutes before this thing figures out how to counter us." The boarding teams had become specialists in quick strikes and rapid extraction. They would hit a ship, plant explosives in critical systems, and retreat before the swarm could adapt. It was dangerous work, with casualty rates that would have been unacceptable in any other war. But it was effective. Meanwhile, Dr. Barnes was making progress with the Queen protocol. The captured Queen's resistance was weakening as her connection to the network grew stronger. Through the modified interface, he could sense the confusion spreading through the swarm fleet as conflicting commands disrupted their coordination. "She's almost ready," Barnes reported. "But I need more time to establish full control." "Time we don't have," Morrison replied, watching as the main swarm fleet pushed through the asteroid field. "The core worlds are defenseless if we can't stop them here." The battle had been raging for 3 hours when the turning point came. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, monitoring swarm communications, detected something unprecedented: arguments within the hive mind. The disruption caused by the captured Queen was creating factions among the swarm vessels. "They're fighting each other," Kim reported in amazement. "Oh, some ships are following the Queen's modified commands, others are trying to maintain original programming." Morrison saw the opportunity immediately. "Barnes, can you increase the interference? If I push harder, I might burn out the Queen's neural pathways. She could die." "And if we don't push harder, we all die," Morrison replied. "Do it." The increase in neural interference sent shockwaves through the swarm network. Ships began turning on each other, their organic hulls reshaping into weapons designed to fight their own kind. The perfect coordination that had made the swarm invincible for 3,000 years collapsed into chaos. "Now," Morrison ordered, "all ships, full assault. Hit them while they're confused." The combined fleet charged into the heart of the swarm formation. Human ships led the way, their crews accepting suicide missions with grim determination. The used Defiance, commanded by Captain Lisa Hayes, rammed directly into the largest swarm vessel, its crew evacuating at the last second as the ship's nuclear reactor overloaded. "For humanity," Hayes whispered as she manually guided the ship's final approach. "For the galaxy." The explosion of the Defiance created a chain reaction that destroyed 6 more swarm ships. But more importantly, it sent a message to every species. In the galaxy, humans would sacrifice everything to protect others. The battle reached its climax when the swarm fleet made a desperate attempt to retreat. The hive mind, damaged by the Queen's interference and the loss of hundreds of ships, tried to withdraw to the dark void between galaxies. But the human fleet had learned from their previous encounters. "No retreat," Morrison announced to the combined fleet. "We end this here. All ships, pursuit formation." The chase lasted for hours as the Galactic fleet hunted down the fleeing swarm vessels. Ships that had once fought with honor and restraint now pursued their enemies with relentless determination. The elegant Zephyrian cruisers used ramming attacks. The proud Drekmori warriors abandoned their codes of honor to destroy fleeing enemies. "The last swarm ship just went dark," reported Captain Stone from the Ranger. "Sensors showed no active enemy vessels in the entire sector." The silence that followed was deafening. After 3,000 years of terror, the Void Swarm was finally defeated, but the victory had come at a terrible cost. Over half the combined fleet had been destroyed, and thousands of beings had died in the final battle. In the aftermath, the captured Queen lay dying in her containment cell. The neural interface had burned out her brain, leaving her body alive but her consciousness scattered. Dr. Barnes sat beside her, monitoring her final moments. "Did we win?" the Queen whispered, her voice barely audible. "Yes," Barnes replied softly. "It's over." "Good," she said, and then she was gone. The memorial service was held on Zentari Prime, where representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered to honor the fallen. The humans had lost more ships and crew than any other species, but they had saved the galaxy from an enemy that had seemed invincible Ambassador Kethfel stood before the assembled delegates, his crystalline form shifting through colors of mourning and gratitude. "The humans came to us as strangers," he said. "Deathworlders from a savage planet. We called them primitive, barbaric, uncivilized." He paused, looking at the human delegation where Admiral Morrison stood with the survivors of the fleet. "We were wrong. They are not savage. They are not primitive. They are guardians.